Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you.
Good morning, and welcome to this service coming to you from the First Unitarian Church in Toledo. And a special welcome today to all mothers. Happy Mother's Day. I'd like to begin the service today with some announcements, actually just two announcements. The first is about our annual meeting. The annual meeting is coming up next Sunday, May 16, at 1 p.m., and it will be via Zoom. In addition to the election of board members, church officers, nominating committee members, and the budget for next fiscal year, there will be 3 issues that require a congregational vote. Our bylaws state that to be eligible to vote, a person must have 1, signed the membership book, and 2, made a pledge payment during the last 12 months or made a pledge in the most recent pledge drive, which ended a few months ago. So feel free to contact our board secretary, Tom Sheehan, that would be me. My email is in the directory if you are unsure whether or not you are eligible. So by now, members who qualify to vote should have received our annual report by snail mail. Voting will also be done by snail mail as it was last year, and members who qualify to vote will receive the ballots by snail mail. The 3 issues coming up for members to vote on are, the first one is a change to our bylaws establishing 2 new membership categories, honorary member, which is a non-voting category, and legacy member. The second issue is the addition of the word inclusive to our vision statement. So if this addition is approved, our church's vision statement is that we hope to become an inclusive, vibrant spiritual community that achieves growth, visibility, and relevance. And the third issue is the endorsement of a land acknowledgement. This statement acknowledges the indigenous history of the land where our church is located. Also, before the annual meeting, members will have the opportunity to attend budget review meetings by Zoom to better prepare for the annual meeting. They will be on Wednesday, May 12 at 7 p.m. and Saturday, May 15 at 10 a.m. And the content for both of these meetings is the same, so there's no need to go to both of them. So see the emailed UUFYI for the Zoom connecting information to attend that. Second meeting is that our men's group is meeting next Sunday from 6 to 8, May 16, and this will be our first in-person men's group meeting. It will be a potluck, and it is open to all who self-identify as male. So we hope that all men will feel welcome to join us, and if you're interested in that, contact David Strickler for details.
Thank you, Tom. Tom Sheehan is our worship associate today. During this pandemic time, that seat is usually filled by our music director, Mickey Emsch, but Mickey is taking a deserved Sunday away, and Tom has volunteered to fill in, so I appreciate your presence here. There's one other point that I wish to make. My understanding is, perhaps partially because of today's weather, it is rainy in Toledo, that we're having some possible internet issues. So if the service goes in and out and you want to get a more concentrated version of the service, I think that it might be reposted later without the buffering issues and such as that we have during the live stream. But please bear with us as you can, and always know that a delay in the live cast might be a time for you to turn inward and have your own prayer, meditation, contemplation till we somehow come back online. So to begin our opening words, we're going to have a prayer. This prayer from the Book of Hours originates with the Congregation of Abraxas, a Unitarian Universalist order for liturgical and spiritual renewal, and this was from 1985. Abraxas was an ancient Gnostic deity unifying contraries, good and evil, darkness and light, fragmentation and integration, fullness and void. Abraxas is the ambiguous nature of life. Abraxans do not choose between humanist and theist, the rational and the emotional, or the traditional and the experimental. Such opposites are inspired by religions of the East and traditions of the West, by pre-literate ritual and secular science, and they inform worship as practiced by all others. So this beginning opening prayer, a table grace, will be given by Tom.
Eternal Spirit of justice and love, at this time of thanksgiving, we would be aware of our dependence on the earth and on the sustaining presence of other human beings, both living and gone, before us. As we partake of bread and wine, may we remember that there are many for whom sufficient bread is a luxury, and for whom wine, when attainable, is only an escape. Let our thanksgiving for life's bounty include a commitment to changing the world, that those who are now hungry may be filled, and those without hope may be given courage. Amen.
And as we light our chalice, I bring you another table grace. This is by our Unitarian sage, Ralph Waldo Emerson. For each new morning with its light, for rest and shelter of the night, for health and food, for love and friends, for everything thy goodness sends. And now please join me in reciting the covenant of this congregation. The words are on the screen. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. And now it's time for our congregational singing, which comes from our teal hymnal today. This is number 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs within, we feel the power of each other's faith. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
And now we have our story by video from our interim religious educator, Soroya King.
Good morning. Today our story focuses on yet another feast. It's the story of Jonah. It's Boundless Love and Forgiveness by Joanne Giannino, and it's been adapted for our use today. In the Jewish tradition, the 4 chapters of the book of Jonah are read aloud at Yom Kippur. Jonah is a minor prophet in the Hebrew Bible, but he has a big message. Some of you may know his story. Jonah is sent by God to Nineveh to warn the people that if they do not change their ways, they will be destroyed. But Jonah doesn't want to go to Nineveh. The people there are not his people. They are not Jewish. And he knows they won't listen to him. Who listens to prophets anyway? So he steals away onto a sailing ship. Of course, the God of the Hebrew scriptures knows where he is and troubles the waters. When the crew finds out that God is after Jonah, they cast him overboard. He urges them to. Actually, Jonah doesn't want them to suffer for his transgressions. Of course, God wants his prophet to make it to Nineveh, so he provides a big fish to swallow Jonah up and to keep him for 3 days and 3 nights. Just enough time to think about what is at stake here. A long time out, right? Well, when the fish coughs him up, again, Jonah is sent by God to Nineveh. This time, Jonah goes. There he warns the people that they must change their ways or be destroyed. And lo and behold, they listened. Who would have thought it? They are not destroyed. They live anew. But Jonah, the reluctant prophet, doesn't understand this turn of events. He would have had the Ninevites thwarted anyway for being so bad in the first place. He would have preferred God not give them a second chance, not recognizing his own second chance. After his time in the big fish, he becomes angry and goes away to sulk on a hill. But God, in the end, is most gracious, patient, and generous, and knowing the human heart as God does, makes room for all people, the Ninevites and Jonah, to make mistakes and change their lives. As listeners and readers of this story today, we can only hope that Jonah eventually understands something about this boundless forgiveness, this boundless love, and rejoins God's people. Let's enjoy the feast.
Today's anthem is also pre-recorded. This is There Is a Love, with words and music by Elizabeth Norton. Now please join me for our time of meditation, contemplation, and prayer. I learned this morning that Bob Bilstein Sr., the father-in-law of Luann Bilstein and Bob's father, died at age 99. So our sympathies go out to their family. I also want us to note that today marks the 60th anniversary, or this period of time marks the 60th anniversary of the formal formation of the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations, which was a consolidation of the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church of America. The two congregations came together to form our UUA. And I say, Happy Mother's Day, with all the angles of our experiences of motherhood, from childhood to parenthood, through blood, via adoption, and by choice, and acknowledging that among us are people for whom the mothering relationship has not been good, others who wish to parent but cannot, and grief when a parent or child has died. For Mother's Day, I have to acknowledge that we don't all have the same feelings about our mothers. There is pure love for some, and let's say it's a bit more complicated for others. But this is a day that came to be celebrated. And our Unitarian forebear, Julia Ward Howe, issued a Mother's Day proclamation. But for our words of meditation, I bring you another table grace. This is called A Prayer Addressing All Hungers by Deborah Smith. We are eating our daily bread and bowing our heads, and yet we are hungry. We are thanking the farmer and the farm worker, and yet we are hungry. We are speaking in spaces for food that is healthy, and still we are hungry. We are tiring of slogans that say, feed the children, and mean, feed the children leftovers. We are hungry for something that feeds more than bodies. We are hungry for help. Help us, O you who apportion the funds. Find in your hearts the child who you were, who would share with a friend free and friendly. Lead us not into meanness, for we are the hungry. We want the loaves and the fishes, the water and the wine of sweet justice for all. We are hungry. Let's observe 1 minute of silence.
Spirit of life, come to me. Sing in my heart all the strength of compassion. Rise in the sea, moving the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Rose holy rose, wings set free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
As we're having table graces for many parts of today's service, our prelude to the sermon consists of mealtime prayers in honor of Mother's Day, which is today, and Eid al-Fitr, celebrated beginning at sundown on Wednesday. Eid is the end of Ramadan, a sacred month in Islam when observant Muslims fast all month during the daylight hours. First, the Islamic invocation, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of the compassionate and beneficent God. It is said that Muhammad, peace be upon him, recited a longer form of this blessing. O Lord, bless this food and protect us from the doom of fire. In the name of God, we begin our meal. And now a light one for the mothers from an early Pennsylvania Dutch song. All my soul is in delight when Mommy fixes kraut just right.
There's a Yoruba proverb that says, if you eat well, you must speak well. I know that I have a little bit of girth showing that I can eat, so I hope you'll find that my words are good today. 4 weeks ago, the topic of our Sunday service was scorching heat, marking the beginning of Ramadan. That sacred month to Muslims, a time of dawn to dark fasting and intensified prayer, will end in a few days when the first light of the new moon is sighted. The holiday Eid al-Fitr, the feast of breaking the fast, will be celebrated then with gift-giving and large meals. And today is Mother's Day, with many families having a tradition of a special meal, whether it might be breakfast in bed for Mommy, who will later have to spend extra energy restoring the kitchen to her standards, with or without kraut, after the kids and the other parent have messed it up, or a nice lunch or dinner in a restaurant, which could be especially trying this year, with some choosing for this to be the first public meal after receiving a COVID-19 vaccine and the dining staff not having regular capacity. What Eid and Mother's Day have in common is feasting. And feasting is a natural part of religious life, family, and sociability. Food can provide comfort, whether through nourishment of the body or associations of the mind to times when particular feasts call up good times. Food can also be a catalyst, the factor to produce a kind of connection between people. There's also much about food and feasting that isn't perceived as good, I know. Overeating isn't physically healthy, but feasts don't require that a person eats more. I'm guilty of loading up at a buffet spread, but I also limit later dining in an attempt to compensate. The considerations of ethical eating, both how the food gets from field and pasture to your table, and the kinds of food omnivorous evolved people partake of, with some choosing to be vegetarian or vegan, or to limit the animals and plants for so many reasons, eating nothing that has a face, for example, or following the instructions of an ancient religion, if not following medical advice, affect how our Toledo Unitarians community interacts. We have disagreements about food and drink and from where we draw sustenance, and we don't always gracefully negotiate how we can feast together. But I know that we want to come together again with food in our mix, and our efforts at getting vaccinated to prevent COVID-19 mean we're getting nearer to when we can be in the same place at the same time. One of the things we've been missing during the pandemic is congregational connection through food. It's not the same with YouTube and Zoom. Our post-service virtual coffee hour on Zoom has dwindled to just a few people. But if you'd like to contribute to that social time, please connect on Zoom after today's service. Last fall, we had 2 Outback food connections. No, not that chain steak restaurant, but picnics in our church backyard. The first, a bring your own food picnic, and the second catered with individual Pizza Hut lunches for our mini auction. I'd like for us sometime in the future to put some picnic tables out back, so we might have lunches and outdoor meetings, but that's for planning on another day. More immediately for this summer, we're going to have outdoor services once a month, with the other summer services still here on YouTube only. For the outdoor ones, beginning May 30th on Memorial Day weekend, when the Blade's food editor, Mary Bilyeu, will be our preacher, and also on June 20th, Father's Day and the summer solstice, July 4th, Independence Day, August 15th, the eve of my wife's birthday, and September 5th, Labor Day weekend. I'll lead most, if not all, of those other services. If you'd like to give a summer sermon, perhaps outdoors on one of those dates, let me know. For the outdoor services, I encourage you to bring your own picnic, and with continued social distancing and following masking guidelines, even with by now possibly most of us vaccinated, let's dine together. You might also bring camp chairs and or a blanket to spread out on the ground for this feast. After we come back together in person indoors, which we hope will begin with in-gathering September 12th, but we can't promise that yet. We might try to have a few religious services centered on sharing a meal. In a couple years, if we've been able to raise funds to renovate our sanctuary, we could sometimes make this space a feast hall. Why wait till coffee hour after the service? But that's in the future. To get to our feasting post-pandemic, I think we need to reimagine our food-related practices. We made some kitchen improvements in this building over the last couple of years, with a better stove and refrigerator and dishwasher, for example, but we still don't have a commercial kitchen or the space there to have too many cooks at once, and we don't want the broth spoiled. After this time of taking care about transmission by touch, recent findings have shown that it's very hard to contract COVID that way, but I think we've also fared better generally by being cleaner around food. We might reduce the potluck aspect and have more focused food preparation for the community, which would mean more volunteering and cooking here rather than making things at home and bringing them. What we need to remember and work to restore is the centrality of our religion, food, and socializing connections. Feast is an important word in faith circles. Before this pandemic came, a growing phenomenon was dinner church, having the meal be a focus of a religious gathering rather than the after-service time for refreshment. Unitarian Universalist ministers Aisha Ansano and Emily Conger established themselves as dinner church consultants, with the website nourishuu.org and a Facebook page. Dinner church is a worship service centered around a meal, they say in their material, adding, dinner church is all about nourishing bodies and spirits through food and ritual. On their website, they state, dinner church is both a recent trend and an ancient tradition. Through the centuries, people have gathered to worship while eating meals together. Harvest rituals celebrate food and promise. Passover seders recognize freedom and redemption. And Christian communion stemmed from the practice of sharing meals to connect people to love and grace. Eating together is the heart of community building. The Latin roots of the word companion are com, with, together, plus panis, bread. And that's their quotation. The essayist Charles Lamb in Grace Before Meat wrote, the custom of saying grace at meals had probably its origin in the early times of the world and the hunter state of man, when dinners were precarious things and a full meal was something more than a common blessing, when a belly full was a windfall and looked like a special providence. And in Pulpit Preaching, Willis P. King wrote, gratitude is from the same root word as grace, which signifies the free, boundless mercy of God. Thanksgiving is from the same root word as think, so that to think is to thank. Dinner church, the grace, whether we're thinking of a thankful affirmation table grace before we eat, or the grace of virtue, kindness, and courtesy in community, might be more meaningful for us in the post-pandemic time. After not being able to be together at all, much less gathered around a table, we can better appreciate all that we share with a meal together. Imagine how we, in our Unitarian Universalist way of inclusiveness, with respect for the earth, its people, and our sources of sustenance, through our pandemic-enhanced yearning for community, might bring dinners into our regular religious practice. I have a few models to draw from, such as chalice suppers from our own tradition, a chabura meal from Judaism, and there are some communion ceremonies adapted from our Christian roots. There's more from other world religions that we can treat and eat with respect. So, Toledo Unitarians food people, how might we bring food into our in-person return in a good way and have it be ongoing? Get into conversation about it, whether with food together or virtually. I do know, too, that some of you might be having a kind of dinner church right now, perhaps with pastry and coffee I don't see on my side of this live stream. So consider how added ritual in community might be rewarding on the level of soul with your food. One more thing I want to include. As we're talking about feasts and food, I get to go back to my time as a journalist, when in 2014, I was interviewing the then new presiding bishop of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, Elizabeth Eaton, an Ohioan. I was the Blade's religion editor, so we talked about serious things, but I also felt I should ask, and this was printed in the Blade, what's the deal with green bean casserole at potluck dinners? Oh, geez, I'm not supposed to talk about that anymore, Bishop Eaton said. There's a caricature of Northern Central European, Garrison Keillor of the NPR show A Prairie Home Companion. This is what we eat, so you find it at a lot of potlucks. She gave an example of a church staff member who is a lifelong Lutheran, but her Puerto Rican heritage doesn't include the dish. In the Garrison Keillor understanding of what Lutherans are like, that's not who we are. And we need to understand that's not who we are anymore. But she also said, anything that has cream of mushroom soup as an ingredient is probably something that we can do. We're not yet ready for a green bean casserole cook-off tasting in our fellowship hall. But we can start our return to fellowship and feasts with some summer picnics. We have the yard, the appetite, and the grace to be together. Let's do lunch. As I close, I'll share 2 more table graces, just to bookend the ones at the beginning of this sermon. This first is anonymous. Bless all the fruits and vegetables that grace our planet, especially the kumquat, rutabaga, and pomegranate. And Eid Mubarak, this is a Sufi blessing with their concentration to God, their orientation to God. May the blessing of God rest upon you. May His peace abide with you. May His presence illuminate your heart now and forevermore. So be it.
Thank you, Reverend Tim. We have one additional grace from Percival Chubb, of the an ethical culture leader. We lift our hearts in thanks today for all the gifts of life. And speaking of gifts of life, we hope that you will be moved to make a donation to this church. And all you need to do is go to our website, uutoledo.org, click on Give, and then click on Online Giving. Or, if you prefer, you can just send a check to First Unitarian Church, 3205 Glendale Avenue, Toledo, Ohio, 43614. And thank you for your generous donations.
And now for coming soon. Next week's 10 a.m. Spiritual Adventures Forum is on CASA, Court-Appointed Special Advocates. Jenny Washing and Therese Lane will host CASA volunteers who will explain how the CASA program works and share stories of their experiences in the program. Then at 11 a.m. is our YouTube service. The title is Botany and Beauty, and next week's service includes our annual flower ceremony. And this year, we are not asking you to bring a flower. Last year, we had you to send photos of all the flowers, which we put into a video feed for the service. This year, we're going to try to do something with one plant instead while we speak of botany and beauty. And also remember, next week at 1 is our annual meeting, and that will be by Zoom.
And please do join us for coffee hour. You can see the Zoom link on the screen above us, or you can also see it in the YouTube description. So we hope to see some of you there at the coffee hour today. And now, for our closing words, we have a Unitarian grace. The food which we are about to eat is earth, water, and sun, compounded through the alchemy of many plants. Therefore, earth, water, and sun will become part of us. This food is also the fruit of labor of many beings and creatures. We are grateful for it. And may it increase our love.
And as we extinguish our flame here, but we send it into the community, I have one more grace. This is called Blessing with Company Present, and it's an 18th century African American folk rhyme. O Lord, now bless and bind us, and put old Satan hind us. O let your spirit mind us, don't let none hungry find us.